I'd like to call to order the Oak Island Town Council public hearing and regular meeting, July 12, 2016. Invocation will be given by Councilman Scott.
Dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you for this day. We'd like to ask you if you would please bless this council. Have us do what is pleasing to you. We also would like to ask you, Father, to bless our first responders. We have seen evil in the last few days like we've never seen before. It's very hard for us to understand this evil, and we ask that you help us. Bless our families. Bless those that are sick and those that are without hope. And when it comes our time, take us into your house, not built with hands, eternal in the heavens forever. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to say welcome to everyone, and we'll go right into our first public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to receive citizens' comments on a proposed amendment to Section 14-121, definition in Section 14-125, use and develop coverage to define the principal structure seaward of the Oak Island and Coastal Resource Commission adopted development line. The proposed line has been slightly changed.
We do. I'm gonna let that screen come down. Okay.
I'd like to remind you to give your name and your address, and we have a new method for timing the 3 minutes, so you could also see when your 3 minutes are up.
And the speaker we have is Dara Royal.
Good evening. Dara Royal, 216 Northeast 47th Street. During previous public hearings on the proposed development line, I encouraged Council to significantly scale back the proposal on the table for an 85-foot development line. Let's consider the area from 26th Place East to Southeast 58th Street, which coincides with the main dune structure in the Sea Turtle project built in 2001. The area contains 165 platted lots and 11 blocks with 12 public accesses and a total length of 8,800 linear feet. A total of 109 houses have been built in the area. The last of these houses was built in 1985. During the next 15 years, 31 of those 109 houses were removed due to erosion. 78 houses remain on 80 lots thanks to the Sea Turtle project. Cabana is located on 5 lots. 80 lots in the area are vacant. 54 of the 78 houses that remain were built prior to any CAMA oceanfront setback standards, which were first established in 1979. Proposed development line in this area does not represent an average line of construction. In fact, it appears to be seaward of all but perhaps one existing structure. The line is significantly seaward of the 24 existing structures built since 1979 with an average building depth of 28 feet, and the land is seaward of the 2,000 mean high water line east of the cabana. In the 2012 aerial photography, the main new structure appears to be intact, but we all know that's not the case today. 2 sections were bulldozed this spring where the dune is completely eroded. 50 to 100% of the original 20-foot wide dune crest is eroded in the remainder of the project area. All this damage to the dune structure occurred in just 4 short years, and the area will continue to erode to pre-Sea Turtle project conditions. The only erosion response activities available to protect roads and building are beach bulldozing and temporary sandbags. These 2 activities rob sand from the public recreational beach. For a perched beach like ours, a relatively thin veneer of sand on top of peat marsh deposits, the public recreational beach is seriously degraded as a result. And the rocks will be uncovered more often and will complicate bulldozing and sandbag operations. The fewer the number of structures and the farther landward the structures are located, the longer the public recreational beach is maintained and enjoyed. Isn't that why people come here? Or would Council rather revive the vacation rental market that developed prior to Hurricane Floyd for fishing off the decks of oceanfront houses? If so, then create a new zoning district, the Pier House District, and require that decks be built to casting standards. In any event, beach nourishment is not an option because the town does not have permits for them to nourish. In fact, council is yet to engage Moffett Nickel to begin the multi-year process necessary to obtain those permits. And there is no guarantee that permits will ever be obtained for sand in sufficient quantities to sustain development along any area of our shoreline. I strongly encourage council to go back to the drawing board before moving forward with a development line proposal. Besides, what's the rush? Actually, retaining the static vegetation line along the entire shoreline may not be the worst option for the time being, all things considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other speakers signed up for this public hearing.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to close public hearing number 1.
So moved.
Second, please. All in favor? We can take action on this at this time. Does anyone have a motion?
I think probably we have some questions that we need answered, that we need to address to our staff.
Call whoever up. Call whoever.
Yep, Steve.
I knew who staff was. Evening.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Steve, what was the change, the big change that pushed all this coming back?
There was a section of the beach, which I've got here, that Cal was supposed to put up on the monitor. It just shows the place in the beach where we didn't put a development line, and DCM staff, after second review, decided that they want the gap closed up so it'll be 100% consistent with the rules that were just written, and they asked that we close that gap with a development line. We left it out because the static vegetation line there, it didn't matter whether we put a development line in or not. It wouldn't affect those properties. Well, some of them are non-conforming. I think there's about 6 houses in that area that when you do the 60-foot setback from the static vegetation line, it actually intersects those homes, and those would be non-conforming with the setback. And if we did the 85-foot development line, some of those lots are so deep that if we went off the front property line, that it goes way upland. This is an area that's, the lots are irregular in size because some of them are 800 feet deep. So we adjusted the proposed line, the proposed development line in this section to meet what would have been the 60-foot setback from the static vegetation line. So it's really the same as if we kept the static line there, and it doesn't affect any change of any property as if it were the static line. I confuse you enough on that one?
So in this area, the lots are so deep that you left off the development line because they would have been able to be closer to the ocean based on the first line of vegetation or the static
Well,
line.
no,
They would have been closer to the ocean than the development line. And now
Correct. We were
DCM is recommending that you put the development line consistent with the rest of the development
Well,
line.
not well, they just want it to run the entire length of the static vegetation line.
Okay.
And we left that.
Where is this area?
That's between 59th Street, middle of 59th Street block, and runs down to 79th Street.
So if somebody builds now, they'll have to come landward of that development line, correct?
They would not be, but they could build up to the development line. Right. But the static vegetation line, what I used in that area was the 60-foot setback from the static vegetation line, because that's what current rules would require for a setback. So I kept the same value to these properties by using the setback from the static line. I see the deer in the headlight look.
Is it still 85 foot from the front?
No, it's not in that area.
That was my question.
Okay.
Steve, typically, what's the distance between the new development line and the static vegetation line? What's the difference between them?
In some cases, in most of the cases, the 85-foot development line is more seaward of the of the static line. It's given you an area that's larger than what the static vegetation line would be.
Any more discussion, any more questions?
I think I asked this question in our last meeting, and I'll ask it again. Do you have any idea how many properties, existing properties, are going to become non-conforming?
Well, you're going to get, there's multiple non-conforming properties now on the ocean front with the static vegetation line. By using the development line, you're actually going to release a lot of nonconformity on a bunch of properties. I don't actually have that number. I do have numbers of, there's roughly 599 oceanfront structures. Margin of error with the data that we use. And I did look at, if we had made that line 55 feet instead of 85 feet, there would have been 523 structures that 85-foot line would have intersected. And of course, that's why we kept moving out seaward with the development line until we got a number that was, a comfortable number that still had the intent of the DCM regs where they didn't want all the houses to be made compliant. They didn't want you to go and put that development line out to the most seaward home and say, this is where we'll build. We looked at it as an average across the board and got to where we were within, I don't remember that number, I apologize, but it was less than 200, I believe. That would still be considered non-compliant with the 85-foot line.
So if we go with the 85-foot, you're saying the houses are going to be closer to the ocean? Some of them, if they're allowed to be.
No closer than 85 feet. Out of that number last time, we were trying to create as little non-conforming structures as possible with the line. And the vegetation line is still what's going to count. You've got to be 60 feet back from that static vegetation line. So if that 85 feet only has 20 feet of vegetation seaward of it, then you've got to move back 60 feet from that vegetation line until you meet that. So not everybody gets to build up to the 85. And the 85 was just really an arbitrary number in these discussions because it parallels the beach mostly, but there are some sections where we didn't do the 85 because the static vegetation line was more favorable than doing an 85-foot line.
So, the properties that are going to become non-conforming,
They're already non-conforming,
they're already non-conforming.
yes.
Well,
Static
you're going to have to help me understand that. The blue line on our map is the proposed town development line.
Correct?
And the red line is the existing static vegetation line, right?
No, that's an overlay. That red line shows the 2012 vegetation line, which that's just an overlay that DCM had that we put on our system as well, just so you can see where the 2012 line was. That line's 4 years old, and of course, it's like Ms. Royal pointed out, there has been some erosion since then.
Okay, which one of these lines represents the static vegetation line that we're going by?
It's the green dotted line. And this area here where the green line is and the blue line is a 60-foot setback, which would be what the current rules are. You'd have to set back 60 feet from that static vegetation line. As you can see,
these maps are very difficult to read, you know that.
yes, sir.
I didn't even realize there was a green dotted line. I thought that was the trees. And in the legend down there, you can't even read what they are. So it's confusing, to say the least. It was confusing the last time it was presented, and it's still confusing.
Yes, sir.
All right, Steve, help me understand this. 65 feet, is that one of the lines of 65 feet, correct?
No, sir.
60 feet?
In this section only, where the static line ran, which is the green line that's not what it's up on the board. There's some other maps here for those that are looking at it. The green line represents the current static vegetation line that's on there. And when DCM said they need to fill the gap in, I came back and I just measured back 60 feet landward from the static vegetation line, which is what the current rules are. This is where you have to build. So that's what I did. I just went back to 60 feet and drew the development line there, saying that's the most seaward that you can build right now. But you still have to have 60 feet of vegetation in front of it, which they should have that in those areas. I'd have to actually go out and do a site visit to determine, which all this will require site visits eventually when it does get approved by Coastal Resource Commission.
So in no way will it ever be less than 60 feet from the first line of,
Stable natural vegetation. No, not unless they get a variance from the Coastal Resource Commission. Everybody has the option of opportunity to get a variance.
that's not very common, is it?
How many are non-conforming now? You gave a number. How many was that?
Well, the number I was looking at was I just had some numbers ran if we had moved back to 55 feet, and there was 523 homes that would have been intersected out of 599 homes. And that again, is just a number that I picked from the front line property, measured 55 feet seaward to see how many homes got intersected. At 60 feet, and again, there's a margin of error on this, but it's it roughly was 473 homes that it would have intersected out of 599.
How many are currently non-conforming? You know?
I would say it would be close to the 523. Now, there's a total of 734 oceanfront parcels. Now, some of those parcels have multiple lots underneath them, so there's more lots than parcels.
Any more questions for Steve? Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Anyone make a motion to approve them? Or make a motion for anything?
Just have a problem trying to put a house closer to the ocean when we're trying to re-nourish the beach and the erosion we have going on until we have a program in place, a nourishment program in place. That's the problem I have.
That's one of my concerns, and I thought I was in the twilight zone or something, but
Steve,
Well,
the
I tell you,
front property line setback is what, 25 feet?
15 feet on the ocean front. From the front property line from the road, it's 15 feet.
Okay.
Her question was the setback from the property line or the property line distance from the street?
From the property line on the street side is 15 foot. What I'm trying to figure out is if you wanted to build a monster house, how much room, what do you need? What is a normal footprint of a house measurement on the oceanfront, on an oceanfront lot?
Well, it depends on where you are. That's not a situation because of the static line, they have zero building envelopes in certain places, negative building envelopes. But areas where they can build, they're building average, I would say, at least 45 feet deep, and then they're doing decks and porches on that. But there's been a lot of areas that they've only had a building envelope of about 30 feet, so it gets reduced.
The two maps that we have on page 9, are those adjoining?
That's a continuation. The top is starting around 58, middle of 59th Street block there. And then it ends up, then the bottom map, it has it ending over at 79th Street.
Okay. It looks like, to me, the development line is pretty much a straight line.
It is.
Based
That's
on
what
the,
we-
go ahead.
But I'm saying that's what we were trying to do, was keep it a uniform line running down the beach.
Yeah, and I see the problem in that. You know, you've got some lots that are deeper than others.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just not sure in my mind that one shoe fits all. It just doesn't look like it all works to me. On paper, it just doesn't look like it works to me. I'm not against the line, I just don't want to see us put something in place that's got holes in it. If there are any holes in it, we need to fill the holes now.
Very.
And I'm not comfortable at this point. I think I said the same thing in the last meeting, and I'm still not comfortable with it.
No, from my standpoint, I'm not comfortable with it either, and I would like, this is gonna sound maybe a little off the wall, I'd like to go down to the beach with the houses and have you show me what you're talking about, because I'm just not getting it. I'm
Yes,
sorry, but
Well, I was just thinking about the workshop we did, I thought there was clarity on it at that point. And the holes, I'm not quite sure which ones you're discussing. The 85 foot, again, we started at 70 and went in increments of 75, just seeing how many homes would get intersected at that point to try and build what's existing on the coastline, on the shoreline. That's what DC, the Coastal Resource Commission, was saying. Let's look at trying to create a line that's consistent with the construction that runs along the beach. And that's what we prepared, was a line that was consistent as to the construction that's being developed on the beach as it exists. And they're saying, all right, make that a firm line in the sand, that now you can't have any more development seaward of that line. This will be the most seaward point that you can build a home. And I'm sorry, I get a little distracted over there. But you still have to have 60 feet of vegetation in front of you, so you still have to meet the setback from the stable natural vegetation. So, and that's what their intent was to allow people to build back on their properties again, and not put it way out there in front of existing homes, but to form a uniform line down the beach that's consistent with the existing homes. And that's what we were trying to accomplish here, and feel that we have accomplished it.
Well, I understand that part of it, and that makes sense. The uniformity makes sense to me. But what I'm having a hard time understanding, I think, is what the others are having a hard time understanding. We've got the vegetation line, and right now, they can build within 65 feet of that vegetation line? Is it 60 or 65 feet?
Well, we've got the static vegetation line,
Yeah.
and you have to be 60 feet landward from that static vegetation line.
Right.
That static vegetation line was the line that was established after we had the large-scale beach renourishment, there was one that was established prior to the beach being filled, which was how the vegetation existed at the time of the beach renourishment. 5 years later, petitioned the Coastal Resource Commission for an alternative static vegetation line, which they gave us the line in 98 as it was prior to Floyd. So they came back and gave us a second line. And that's why it says the 1998 static vegetation line, because that was the second line that we got from the beach renourishment, which was one of the rules that they allowed you to do at that time. And there is areas where there is still vegetation that is well seaward of that line. There's areas where the vegetation is close to the static line as it was when it was first done. But, it's the static vegetation line is a line that was laid out on the sand, saying this is where you have to measure back from. Doesn't count how much vegetation grows seaward of that line. You have to start from this point. By doing a development line, you now get to start measuring back from the natural stable vegetation line. The static line is no longer used as a measurement for setbacks. You get to start measuring from the the normal vegetation as it exists and measure 60 feet. If it's seaward of that 85-foot line, it doesn't matter. You can't go any more, you can't go beyond the development line with your structure. If you've got 100 feet of vegetation in front of that development line, you still can only build to the development line. You cannot go any seaward over. So the erosion will push the structures back for development on their own.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion and see where it goes, because, and what you just said helps me to understand it a little better, because, and I think some of the questions are, if you're dealing with the static vegetation line and we got a building line, which one takes precedent over the other? The building line is gonna be the line no matter where the static vegetation line moves to, what you just said.
The development line will be the most seaward.
Well, that's what I meant to say,
Right,
the development
right.
line.
But yeah, the static vegetation line, it basically won't be recognized for development anymore. You have your most seaward boundary where you could build, which is the development line, and then you have the stable natural vegetation that you have to measure back from. So as long as you've got 60 feet of vegetation seaward of that development line, you can build up to that development line. But as that vegetation goes landward, then
Pushes you back.
you move back with it.
So even if you have 100 feet beyond the development line, you can't build past the development line?
That's
the
correct.
furthest seaward you can go?
That's correct. And if your vegetation is landward of that development line, then you're not gonna be able to build. Your building envelope would be so small you couldn't build anything.
Okay, that helps me. Does it help everybody else? Gives me a little better, a little clearer understanding
And
of
the
it.
development line as proposed is further inland than the static line right now, right?
At least in this section it is.
The section that we're proposing, yes. We moved it in 60 feet.
This is for the entire island, right?
What you're talking about tonight is just a section that fills in the gap that, I mean, what's being proposed is filling in the gap. The rest of the island was basically set at the 85, except for a couple areas where, again, the lots were a lot deeper and irregular, and it was easier to move, and you gave the areas more. That sparked another question.
So we had it all set up, and everything was a go, then the CRC stepped in and said, wait, time out, you gotta address this issue right here, this gap.
Correct. The CRC was fine with everything. They just wanted us to fill in that gap. And that's why we're back here tonight, is to fill the gap. You know, they're fine with everything else other than not being that one area.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the proposed amendment to section 14-121 and 14-125 as presented and as the associated plan consistency statement. And I might also add that the planning board has also recommended approval. And I think sometimes we need to trust our planning board.
You have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Public hearing number 2.
Did it pass or fail?
Thank you, Steve.
It passed.
Excuse me. Public hearing number 2. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive citizens' comments on proposed amendments to section 18-665, exemptions 18-669, standards for residential development, 18-663. Stormwater management system, concept plan, section 32-72, definitions, and section 32-77, no clearing without permitting. Any speakers?
There are no speakers signed up for this public hearing.
I entertain a motion to close public hearing number 2.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Public hearing number 3.
Whoa. Action on public hearing number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. We should, sorry about that. We can take action on this public hearing. Does anybody, Chair would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to make a recommendation. I talked with Steve a long while about this today, and the state has come out with some new stormwater regulations that will be effective tomorrow, and we have also since hired a part-time stormwater administrator. I would make a recommendation that we table this for now and allow him time to look at the new state guidelines and come back to us with recommendations relating to this.
Any more comments? Any consensus of the council?
We'll need a vote on that one, I think.
Would you like to make that a motion?
And to make it in the form of a motion, yes.
How about a second? All in favor? All opposed? It's unanimous. Public hearing number 3. The purpose of the public hearing, the purpose of the public hearing is to receive citizens' comments or proposed amendments to section 18-374 definitions, interpretation, and construction, and section 18-412 procedure for review of minor subdivisions.
There are no speakers signed up to speak on this one.
Chair would entertain a motion to
Motion to close public hearing.
second.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. We can take action, have action taken on this amendment as well.
I think it would be beneficial to all of us for someone from staff to explain this to us and the purpose of it. Make sure everybody understands what we're doing.
I'd be happy to give a brief staff report.
Thank you.
So the language within the Oak Island zoning ordinance regarding minor subdivision requirements is unclear, which is why this text amendment is before you now, so it can be clarified. The Planning Board has reviewed this and recommended adoption. The point when a subdivision jumps from a minor to a major is when it reaches 5 lots, and the original tract is included within that calculation. So to have a minor subdivision approved, our zoning ordinance specifies a certain set of evaluative criteria you have to meet before it can be defined as a major subdivision. And that criteria is as follows. It can't be more than 4 lots, as I just stated. It can't require an extension of public water or sewer to the system. It must be consistent with the zoning ordinance and cannot negatively impact the surrounding properties. So if any of those conditions occur, then the minor subdivision is bumped up into a major subdivision. It's the third one about the extension of the water and sewer that this text amendment is for. The process to have a minor subdivision approved is the applicant would first bring in the survey on a Mylar to my office, and then I would review it for zoning compliance and consistency. At that point, assuming everything was in compliance, it would be signed, sent up to the county for them to sign, and recorded at the Register of Deeds. At that point, the property lines change on the map. So the primary issue here is with the extension of public water and sewer. The term extension isn't defined and could be interpreted in many ways. So we drafted this text amendment in order to clarify that, so it wasn't so up to interpretation. It was more of a very clear black and white kind of thing. The extension is in section 18-374, which is in your attachment where the change occurs. It refers to not necessarily just the laying of piping infrastructure. Our public works director referred me to a section in the state stormwater regulations that helped us come up with our definition, and that was in 15A NCAC 02, those regulations. So the highlighted part in your text amendment shows exactly what the ambiguous language being removed and what the new definition and requirements are. That's it.
Questions for Jake?
So you've got a parcel of land, say 3 acres. You're gonna divide it into 4 lots. There's already a sewer line there. How does that work?
So if there is already an existing permit, there's lines there, there's already an existing permit, and that permit allows for the additional capacity and flow, then you're fine. You're set to go. But if you have to go to the state or to the county to get that additional extra flow, then it would be bumped up to a major. The reason for this is we don't want to be put in a situation, we as in the town, where you have approved a minor subdivision and then there's not the appropriate adequate infrastructure to provide to those new subdivided lots. And now the burden is on the town to have that in place rather than the applicant. Did I say that right?
Jeff, do you have any questions? No one?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the text amendment as proposed in the associated plan consistency statement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please. Unanimous, Debbie. All right. We kind of flipped it around a little bit. We're going to do the presentations beginning of the meeting before we go into public comments, in case some people don't want to stay. They just want to see the people that are here that have to go back home. It makes it a little easier for them. Mr. Holland, would you like to come up now? This is the next steps for our comprehensive land use plan.
And if I could just interject one moment. Mr. Holland and I did not actually have direct contact before I printed the agenda, so I put him under the presentations in case he wanted to make a separate presentation, but it's also listed under new business 1 as an action item. So it's up to you and Mr. Holland if you want to hear from him now, or if you just want to wait until it comes up under new business.
It's up to Mr. Holland.
If I can make my remarks now, and let me add to that, I am going to ask you for one decision tonight, which is not approval of the plan. The staff and I would like to have your authorization for us to submit the draft to the Division of Coastal Management for their review, so we can get that step in the process out of the way. And then once following coastal management review, which will simply be to ensure that the plan is consistent with the 7B planning guidelines for Cameron land use plans, we will be back before you for a formal presentation of the final draft and movement to a public hearing on the document.
Okay.
So having said that, I will do it whichever way you folks would like to do it.
Are we able to take action after he does a presentation at this point, or do we need to do adjustments?
Mr. Eads prefers us to take action after we've actually opened the regular meeting,
Okay.
based on prior experience.
Might as well wait, you got to stay anyway,
Okay.
unless you particularly want to do it now.
You want me to wait for my remarks?
That would probably be better for you and the council. Now we're going to the public comments portion of our agenda.
Mayor, if we could adjust or approve the agenda first.
Sorry, I'm skipping.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to move number 3 out of consent agenda and put it under number 2, items removed.
Any more adjustments or amendments?
Putting it where?
Under items removed from consent agenda, number 2.
Madam Mayor, we need to also add an application for committee, emergency services,
Okay,
George Tatum.
all right.
And that's for an unexpired term. Have an opening.
Any more adjustments or amendments? Chair to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Thank you. Now we'll move into the public comment section of the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, ma'am. John Buck had signed up on the public hearing one, but you wanted to make a comment about the CPAC, so.
Just remind you to give your name and address, sir.
John Bach, 108 Southeast 38th Street. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to make some remarks about CPAC. I am a volunteer citizen member of CPAC, and I can tell you that the committee, some members are here, along with Dale, along with Councilman Weinkoff and Blaylock, all contributed to a cooperative enterprise. The CPAC model rests on a very wise decision that Council made some time ago to have broad-based public input, to have expert advice in the form of Hollid Consulting, and to have citizen leadership. And out of that has come a template for thinking about the future of our community and our island. And thinking about the future is always speculative and always difficult. But I would urge Council to give the CPAC plan deliberate consideration and to conduct a vigorous, transparent public discussion of the issues and challenges and opportunities that are raised within the report. I'll give you an example from my own personal point of view. The number one issue in the citizen survey was managing growth. Managing growth is both a challenge and an opportunity. Unfettered growth, a boom-to-bust build-out of the island and the mainland, will crush our infrastructure. It'll devastate our tax base ultimately. It will degrade the environment. It will create huge density issues. On the other hand, there's the opportunity with planning and foresight to have enlightened regulation coupled with vigorous enforcement, to have an economic plan that diversifies the tax base. These things are possible, but only with careful planning, foresight, and decisive leadership. So I would encourage you to involve the community further in a discussion of the issues embedded in the plan, and to couple that discussion with the Unified Development Ordinance, which is coming from the Planning Board, built around CPAC. Thank you for your time and for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Miles Varner.
My name is Miles Varner, and I live on the island permanently, I hope, as long as I have left. And in any case, I brought up the topic of safety on the side roads, and later in discussion with the mayor and with Mr. Blaylock and I guess with the planning department, it was decided to include the beach speed along with it. And I agree with that. I think they're both important safety issues. And, but I am going to just want you to take note that there's a different requirements that are at hand between the one on the beach and the one inland, so to speak. The beach decision requires the opinion of the state and the state approval and so on in order to do that, to change anything in relation to the speed limit. As I say, I still agree with it. It should be done, but my concern is with the other half of the proposal, which is, again, for safety reasons that we propose. And it isn't because I want it that way or prefer it that way or anything else. It's safety issues based on some observations of things that have gone wrong with it as it is, which I won't go into that much detail. But at the moment, there's a lot of confusion about what the speed limit is on the side streets. And that ranges from people, for example, who live in the Opon area, where it is 25, assume that the whole city is 25 miles an hour. People that come in off of where the roads say 35, assume you just keep going, that's bad. And that is the way the law reads. When I say there's confusion, I came here 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago. The first time I was concerned about speed of number of the activities in my neighborhood, which is on the west end, and west side, I should say. The concern led me to go to the police department, and they told me it was 25 miles an hour. A year later, I asked about it, and it was 35 miles an hour. I went back last year, and they told me it was 25 again. Then, and I wrote a proposal basically based on that because I thought the communication was the issue, and I wanted to deal with the communication about this thing. I still feel it should be 25. It's not. It's 35. The reasons for feeling that are, as it is now, there are streets on the west end which, for example, are 1 block long, have a stop sign at either end of it, and the speed limit.
3 minutes are up, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm in favor of it.
Council reports.
I'm sorry, we have one more speaker. Betty, I'm sorry, Betty Thorne.
Show and tell.
Betty Thorne, 2501 East Beach Drive. I want to talk to you, well, first of all, I'm going to say one sentence about the speed limit. I live on Beach Drive. I do not want to see 35 miles an hour year-round. I will leave it at that. But my main reason for coming is I want to talk to you about Beach Vitax, and it's going to be a show and tell because some things you have to see in order to believe it. I'm going to tell you about Beach Vitax, and then I'm going to follow up later on, because I won't take my time to do that now, with an email giving you the history of our issues with this plant. This is a noxious plant that grows on the dunes all up and down the beach. I don't know how much of it is still growing because we have had about a 10-year-long plan to contain it and treat it twice a year. But recently, I don't know when, several years, 2 or 3 years ago maybe, that program stopped for some reason, and this year it's coming back with a vengeance, and this was coming out of my yard. To show you how fast it grows, this is 1 month's growth. If this had been left attached at the end of the growing season this year, this thing would be 3 or 4 times this length, okay? It was originally sold as a beach stabilization plant back in the 90s, and then in the early 2000s, the state, well, others too, discovered that this, instead of stabilizing the dune, it destroys the dune, because what it does, it grows so fast and it propagates so easily, it crowds out the sea oats, and they go away. This does not hold sand. This is the root. That's the only root it has. It grows along the ground like that. It sends up a shoot like that, and then some of it falls over and creates a little root, and then that one sends up a shoot, and it falls over and creates another root. So it goes up in arcs. So sand blows through it, and it doesn't collect. The good news is this problem is fixable and it's treatable if we catch it now and restart the containment program that we were doing. If we don't, this plant, like Sherman, will march to the sea, and once it gets there, it spreads across the dry sand beach like this and creates a thicket, which will make the beaches, the rocks on the beach will look like a gift from God by the time this stuff gets through being on the beach. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, time's up.
Oh, I have finished. Oh. Thank you.
Any more?
That's it.
Can I ask a question
Make a
about
comment.
Sure, sure.
I was startled when I saw that tonight, because I know we had a big issue with that at one time up where I live, and it's all gone away. And I haven't looked lately to see if there's any more of it there. But I'd like to see some sort of a survey done to see if this is an issue up and down the whole beach, and if it is, we need to put together a plan to deal with it.
We did have a program, and Ms. Thorne asked me to find the files on that, and I think I know where they may be. But I think also have something in our ordinance to address it as well. So sounds like we need to revamp what we were doing.
So do we need a consensus to have you direct it? Okay.
I'll handle it.
Doesn't sound like there's an issue on it, but there's a lot of scientific proof that it does just the opposite. There's a lot of scientists that came out and stated it does just the opposite of its intent. Instead of stabilizing and encouraging dune growth, it actually destroys the dunes for the very reason, the shallow roots. It crowds out what can help it and destroys the dunes. So I'm glad to hear you're going to inventory it before it gets bad.
And I did give you a fact sheet. Everybody has a fact sheet and a website, but I passed that before the meeting. I didn't get a chance to tell you.
Yeah, thank you. Any more comments before we move on? All right, is council reports? Mayor report? Next.
First of all, I want to thank all staff for Beach Day. I mean, we started off with rain, heavy rain, and the staff stuck in there and they made a great beach day. It turned out to be wonderful, and they need us to know that we really thank the job they did. They did a great job. The second thing is I'd like to say to this committee who's worked on this plan sometimes twice a month, 3 or 4 hours sometimes, to make sure this comprehensive plan came together. They've done a great job, and it's time to move forward with it now. And when it comes up tonight, I think we need to go ahead and proceed and push this on through.
Councilman Blaylock?
I'd like to go back to what Miles was saying about the speed limit. I think we've had some miscommunication. The main goal was the side streets to start with the 25 miles an hour. That's what we were after. And after patrolling these streets for all these years, those side streets over there don't need to be 35 miles an hour. You can look from one end to the other, for Pete's sakes. I mean, little kids on bicycles, skateboards coming down driveways. It just, that was the main goal, was that. The one on Beach Drive is a battle that's been fought for a long time. And I won't go into my personal opinion on that one. Thank you.
Well, I'll confess to you, I've been living here 16 years, and I thought the speed limit on all side streets was 25, so. But it is where I live, but I understand now after tonight that some of the other side streets in the old Long Beach area are still 35. So, yeah, I'm in favor of the 25. Just like to mention something to you, and it's really just a public interest, a community thing. Some of you may know Jimmy and Mary Price. They've been around here a long time. If you don't know Jimmy Price, you need to get to know him. His grandson, Mark, was in a motorcycle accident several weeks ago, and he has a severed spine and is paralyzed. His father is Donnie Price. I don't know his mother's name. Do you?
Ingrid.
Ingrid, yeah. And tomorrow afternoon from 5 to 6, there's going to be a fundraiser for him at Southport Baptist Church. You know, they do the Wildlife Bait and Tackle Flounder Tournament every year, and it was done this past weekend. And there was literally a ton of flounder weighed in. All that fish has been donated, and they're going to serve that at the fish fry tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, 5 to 6. So go by and get you some fish and help a good cause. And If you don't mind, say a prayer for Mark. That's all I have.
Thank you.
No report.
Nothing.
I have a comment to make, and it's to ask you guys, as many as you can, and spread the word. We're having an important special revenue meeting for the council to discuss some sources for beach nourishment on August the 4th. Do we have a time yet?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. on August 4th. Hope all of you can come out for that and let your neighbors know too. If you have anything to suggest or make comments to the board, please send us an email so we can look them over and give them some thought before we get there that day. And that's all I have for the report too. Oh, one more thing. There is another fundraiser, but it's August the 9th, and it's going to be for Seabiscuit Wildlife Rehab Center. It's going to be a concert at the soccer field from a group called Mike's Garage Band. We have council meeting that night, so we won't be there, but encourage your friends and neighbors to come out. It's for a good cause. All right, now we're to the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please. Unanimous.
And just to clarify, that was the, to approve it as amended.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
After I said it, I thought that, yes. The items we've moved down is the authorization for staff to request a study of the DOT regarding possible speed limit changes on Beach Drive. Councilman Weinkoff, you
Yes,
want to
Madam
address it?
Mayor, I'd like to get consensus of council, direct staff to bring us back an amendment to ordinance to change the speed limit to all side streets to 25 miles an hour. Jake?
Just a quick note on that. It's more complicated than simply changing the ordinance, which does say speed limit 35 unless otherwise posted. There has to be, for 2 weeks straight, public notification done in the paper, as well as what DOT calls a declaration of acceptance, where the town would have to sign. There also has to be a resolution adopted in support of it, and we have to purchase the appropriate DOT-approved signage as well, and that would have to be purchased, and I would provide DOT with a map showing the locations that we are planning to put those signs, and they would have to approve and verify that it met their regulations. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that those are the things that would need to be done. I'll do them all if it's, yeah.
You want to restate your,
I'd like to direct staff to start the process of changing the side streets to 25 miles an hour.
Second.
all in favor? Thank you.
You want to separately address the traffic counter?
Yeah, we do need to address that also. Mr. Weinkoff, the traffic counter,
Yes, Madam Mayor.
free traffic counter that
We
has been
got the
requested.
chance to get a traffic counter to monitor traffic that comes across the bridge and get some kind of idea what kind of, how much traffic we do have tourism-wise, or day-to-day, or day trippers, however you want to call it. And I think if it's going to be free and it's being offered to us, we ought to take advantage of it.
I agree.
So we need a motion on that, or can it be a consensus?
Both bridges?
You can just direct staff, I think, on that one. Yeah. We could do it on one bridge for a certain period of time and then do it on the other bridge.
That's what we're hoping.
I guess there's a formula where they can determine how many people go across it 2 or 3 times as they run on off the island. How do they come up with that? I don't know.
No, Jay might know. Do you know, Jay?
So the Council of Governments, Cape Fear COG, informed me they have one. DOT will not do it. It's against their policy for the purposes that we wanted it for. There's always the option of hiring an engineering firm. That costs money. Why do that when the COG will, essentially, they won't do the work for us, but they have one in their office. They said I can just come up and, use it for an extended amount of time. I just have to figure out how. They're not so sure, but yeah, I mean, I can get it done.
You're pretty tech savvy, so I think I have confidence.
Never never used one before, but
So what you would do would be do one bridge one week, another bridge another week?
sure, if that's what you want.
No, I mean, you can't do but one bridge at a time if you don't have but one,
We
right?
only have one.
And of course, we'd want to make sure we got weekends at both bridges.
And it needs to be done during a heavy tourist season, so
As
that,
soon as possible, yeah.
We just, the only requirement they had is that we block it up, which is, no big deal.
Not a problem.
if it gets damaged or broken while we have it, are we responsible for it?
That's a great question. I would think,
Don't answer that.
That's one of my questions, because those things are expensive, I would think. Whatever,
I'm sure they have it insured.
I hope.
Thank you, Jake. All right, we have a committee appointment on emergency services, and did you say it was unexpired?
Yes, an unexpired term.
Mr. George Tatum. Thank you.
It's a separate sheet. It's a separate sheet.
Yeah, did you get,
Yeah, I have one. You got
want
one?
to take a minute and look it over, everyone?
Oh, I read that.
Sounds like a good candidate to me.
You don't call for a vote on this, do you?
You just ask them if they're all in favor.
All in favor? Thank you.
Can I see that?
I'm sorry. Mr. Reed,
I just had a question.
I don't have it with me. Can I-
Ms. Sykes, is there any town report or?
Yes, actually. I wanted to echo what Councilor Weinkoff said about staff for Beach Day. And of course, we always thank the Parks and Recreation staff for all the work that they do. And I want to also especially thank the underloved Public Works staff who helps the Parks and Recreation staff put everything up, take it down, takes all the trash out. And then the police department and fire department, not only for their efforts on Beach Day, but the entire weekend, obviously a very busy weekend for everybody involved. So thank you very much. And they were actually cheerful when they came back to work on Tuesday. It was great. Fireworks. And so just a reminder to everybody that shooting fireworks off is illegal, and that's according to North Carolina state law. Police issued 18 citations on just July 4th. I'm sure they could have had many more. And that is actually a Class 2 misdemeanor. And many fireworks were seized. And just as a side note, police did also spend some time with a veteran who was suffering some post-traumatic stress disorder from the fireworks. So, and those were fireworks in his neighborhood, not an officially sanctioned display. Also wanted to remind everyone about golf cart use. Golf carts must be street-legal, low-speed vehicles, and they must be driven by a licensed adult on the street. So you can't have your 5-year-old grandson driving the golf cart, please. Don't drive them on the sidewalk. Follow the other traffic laws. They have to be insured and registered, and police do enforce this. I think it's already been mentioned, we're having a joint meeting with the Beach and Inlet Committee on Thursday, this Thursday at 4 p.m. in this room. Also wanted to mention, as a side note, that while we are pursuing the development line approval through the Coastal Resources Commission, we're also at a staff level working on the logistics of how to best collect sewer assessments that will become collectible once the property is buildable and the sewer assessment will no longer be held in abeyance. So we're also taking that into consideration.
That meeting time was for the Beach and Inlet Committee, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Mr. Eves, do you have?
Two quick things, Madam Mayor. One, the town of North Topsail Beach's Board of Aldermen has recently voted to start a volunteer beach patrol program, and they've modeled that after Oak Island's Beach Ambassador Program. And I just, for all those volunteers and for you folks, that's a kind of a feather in your cap. And secondly, the Emerald Isle case that deals with the dry sand beach, as you know, is going to the North Carolina Supreme Court. So far, 18 of the 21 municipal governments, coastal municipal governments, have agreed to sign on to an amicus brief. Oak Island is one of those 18. We anticipate we'll get all 21, and I believe we have formal commitments from 3 of the 6 coastal counties, and the other 3 just haven't had a chance to consider it yet at their meetings. So you're in the majority on the support of that case, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. We have no old business tonight. And we do have new business. Mr. Holland, would you like to come back up, please?
Thank you again for your time this evening. Let me put you at ease. I do not intend a lengthy presentation on the comprehensive plan. I am very pleased with this draft document that you have, not because it is Holland Consulting Planner's document, but this is truly a document produced by the town of Oak Island. We have had tremendous support and direction from your comprehensive plan committee, which for those here who may not know, the committee included Gary Anderson, John Bach, Charlie Blaylock, Ted Bodenschantz, Neva Cardwell, Glenn Frazier, Kelly Germain, Cindy Johnson, Lynn McDowell, Malcolm Morrison, Dennis Pacula, Jim Snakenberg, and Councilman Weinkoff. That dedicated group of people has met 14 times in the last 14 months for hard-working, many times, as Mr. Weinkoff mentioned, lengthy meetings. The plan was prepared under their wisdom and guidance and counsel, and I think it truly reflects a lot of direction from that group. I especially like to thank Kelly Germain, the chairperson for the committee, for her strong and steady leadership during the process. The whole plan is based on an extensive citizen participation process. Throughout the process, every step of the way has been documented and shown on a dedicated website, which is planoakislandnc.net. And tonight, for anyone here who goes home and goes on the computer and looks at that, the entire draft document is on the website and completely accessible and downloadable. Throughout the process, we had distributed a survey which was constructed in concert with the advisory committee, and we received over a 6-month period of time 1,921 responses to that survey. A lot of what is reflected and was done in the comprehensive plan was based on the results of those surveys, some of which Mr. Bach a few minutes ago referred to. And out of those 1,921 surveys, 834 of those were from permanent full-time residents. The survey was posted on the website, and through a lot of volunteer time by your committee members, it was distributed at various locations throughout the community. And we got not only the responses over the website, but we got a lot of hard copy responses from the distribution of those surveys by your committee. As a result of that, there are two compelling things, again, several of which Mr. Bach referred to, that lay the basic framework for this plan: managing growth and creating economic stability in a fiscally responsible manner. And there are a lot of ways the plan tries to respond to those two objectives, including a number of recommended land use actions. There are extensive recommendations in the plan with respect to the preparation of the UDO that the Planning Board is now working on. So this plan has laid a real roadmap which will be helped in its implementation through the update of the UDO, which again is currently underway, with an objective to have a draft of that document sometime between the fall and the end of this year. So we are now concluding, with respect to the comprehensive plan, a 14-month process. And the next step in this process will be to submit it to Coastal Resources for review and comment, because this document not only serves as a genuine comprehensive plan for the town, it will also update your CAMA plan, which is out of date and needs recertification. But to accomplish the CAMA certification as well, the plan has to be submitted to the Division of Coastal Management for review and comment. And there are really two steps in that process. One, if you authorize us to do so, the plan will be submitted to Mike Christenberry at the Wilmington office for coastal management for him to look at the document and make sure it satisfies what they call consistency review, that Mike is satisfied that we've appropriately responded to the 7B planning guidelines. At that point, which it should be a smooth process, it will then be distributed to a huge number of state agencies for review and comment. That whole process takes 75 days. So we are into the fall of the year before we would be ready to ask you to consider conducting a public hearing if we want to also achieve CAMA certification, which the staff, the committee, and I all strongly recommend that we do that. Normally, there are not, if the plan passes consistency review, there normally aren't any earth-shattering comments that we would get back from the range of state agencies that will look at the document. Some of those state agencies, such as Fish and Wildlife, have already been involved in the process, and we have already responded to some of their comments. So we really don't think this will be a complicated process. And I'd like to emphasize that CAMA review and that state agency review isn't to tell you what your policies and your objectives have to be. They just want to make sure that there are no inconsistencies with state regulations and their regulations. They're not going to comment and tell us that you've got a good or bad policy or a good or bad strategy. So I want to be clear about that. And once again, if you authorize us to submit the plan, that does not constitute approval in any way, shape, form, or fashion. What this process does is it gives the public another 75 days to vet the plan before we go to public hearing with it. And I have provided over here on the agenda table some copies of the executive summary of the plan, if any members of the public would like to pick one of those up this evening. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have about the plan or the process, but once again, I applaud the efforts of your committee. It's one of the better committees I've ever worked with on a comprehensive plan. And I should have also added that I greatly appreciate the enthusiastic and continuous support that we have received from your town staff in this process.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Holland?
Can I just add one thing? Just to echo what Mr. Holland said in praise of the committee. Not only did they participate in all the meetings, but they took it upon themselves to really promote it in the public with getting public input and participation. So just want to thank them for that.
Mr. Holland, you mentioned the 75-day window there for approval for coastal management. Does that include the CAMA certification that we have to have?
No, what we'll have to do is once we get the state comments and do what, if there are any modifications or tweaks we have to make, we'll make those. Then you go to public hearing and adopt the plan. Then we submit it back to coastal management, and at that point they certify it. And under the new planning guidelines, which were adopted in on February 1st of this year, we no longer have to go to the Coastal Resources Commission. It can be approved by the director of the coastal management program.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Holland Consulting and staff to submit the comprehensive land use plan to the Division of Coastal Management for review.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Thank you
Great
very,
job.
very much.
At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Thank you.